All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is David Hessen, and I am the Director of Programs for the Chatfield Edge. If you are new to us, welcome. We are so glad that you're here. And we want to welcome all our Chatfield Edge family in for wherever you're calling from. This is the third in a series of webinars that we are providing to support our students who are all at different points in their educational journeys. Some are just starting, some are almost finishing. Whether you're deciding on where to apply to school, if you're balancing school and life, or if you're trying to figure out what to do once you've got the degree, that's what this is going to help you with. We also support mentors and community members who want to help us and boost our scholars. Also, if any of you have ideas for future webinar topics, we're interested. You can put those in the chat box. Alex, who we've been talking to, will be monitoring the chat and taking all of that down. Just a few little housekeeping items. The presentation itself will run about 30 minutes. Then we will open it up for Q&A. While you're watching, please be muted, especially if you have pets, kids, other things in the background. We may do some polls and quizzes, so be ready for that. And if you have questions, jot them down. If it's something immediate and you think you're going to forget it, put it in the chat box. Alex will see it, or hold on to them and we'll ask for them at the end. So I'm going to turn it over now to Robert Elmore, our executive director, who's going to introduce the topic and the speaker.
Thank you, David. Well, since we are about to start a new calendar year, we're hosting this webinar and hoping that it might help you stick to your New Year's resolutions. Setting goals that are specific, measurable, achievable can really help you to succeed. So let me introduce you to our presenter, Keith Crowell. He's a former financial advisor to Chatfield, longtime friend of Chatfield, a newly elected Board of Trustee member. With over a 25-year career in financial services focused on client satisfaction, Keith has guided numerous clients across many different for-profit and not-for-profit industries to achieve their goals and objectives. With more than a decade of sales leadership experience leading high-performing teams, it has been his pleasure to recruit, hire, lead, and develop numerous best-in-class salespeople. Keith is passionate about coaching and feedback, mentoring, and developing tomorrow's leaders. These activities are the fuel that drives his passion and enthusiasm and his work ethic. Keith has significant experience in sales management, team leadership, employee engagement, new business development, relationship management, and more importantly, integrity in action. So without further ado, here is Keith Crowell.
Bob, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. The agenda for tonight, overview, very simple. Goal setting is really a very simple topic, and the goal is really to break it down into a few bullet points that you can handle I don't want to say without a lot of effort, but without overthinking it. So tonight we're going to talk about fear, confidence, accountability, and some techniques that I've used in the past, whether it was as a student, through high school, through college, in my early career, as an intern, my first job out of college, or for the last 25 years in financial services, where I've mostly been in a team leadership, sales management role. And then we'll save some time for Q&A at the end, and then Bob will provide a short wrap-up for us. As we go along, Alex and Bob and the rest of the team will be managing the chat. So if there's a question, comment, something you want to expand further on, please use the chat so that the rest of the team can see that and yell at me to stop talking. As my wife and kids tell me all the time, I talk too much, so it's likely I'll keep right on talking and not see a comment in the chat. So, and David's comment earlier about staying muted because of your pets. Well, at our house, it's probably the kids. I have a high schooler and a college student, both of who are on a snow day today. So The dogs are probably the quiet ones. So we'll start off with, I'm a big fan of quotes. I like to research quotes that are relevant to topics. So as we talk about goals, here's a good one. A goal without a plan is just a wish. And Bob mentioned SMART goals. Goals without plans to execute on them really are just kind of, taking a stab in the dark. They're luck. So let's do our first goal planning check-in. Question here, you should see it pop up on the screen, looking for your answer to the two questions. And we'll pause here and see how everybody answers and what the results are. So Bob, I will wait for you to publish the results. So first question, how often do you sit down to establish, and in parentheses, a real key here is write out personal, educational, or professional goals? And then the second question is, have you already done any goal planning for 2026? So I'll be interested to see the results. Bob, you are muted if you are chatting.
There's still quite a few results coming in, so we'll give it a couple minutes. We've got about a third of our group that's responded.
Great, a lot of participants, so that's a good challenge to have. As we're waiting for the results, one of the good things to think about here is, you plan goals on an almost daily basis, right? You get up, what do I want to get done today? But there's a difference between that and specific effort put into setting goals you want to achieve in a specific time frame and planning for the steps of how you're going to get there, which is really more of what we're going to be talking about. How are we looking, Bob?
Okay, we've got about 60 respondents. It's been about 2 minutes. They're still coming in, so I will give it another 30 seconds, and then we'll close this poll out and publish the results.
I have a feeling.
So if you want to vote, hurry up and get in there.
Yeah. I have a feeling I know what the answer is going to be to number one, but we'll see if the group surprises me.
All right, about 10 more seconds, folks. All righty, looks like we're going to close the poll. And now we'll share the results. Can you see the results?
Okay, I can. So really split evenly, 42% three to four times a year, 41% annually, 1% hardly ever. That's, honestly, that's great. Those are great results. I actually expected hardly ever to be a much larger percentage. You got 83% of the respondents are 3 to 4 times a year or annually. I have to tell you, my opinion is that's probably more often than most people in an educational or early career setting. Have you already done goal planning for 26? 86% said yes. That is an impressive result. Much higher percentage than I thought. The good news is it's only December 2nd. So the 14% of you that said no, plenty of time. And in fact, today was a snow day here. Great day to do some goal planning. So I am very impressed with those results. So Bob, thank you. And let's go ahead and move on. So planning your goals for next year. Why should we have goals? So there are many reasons. They're unique to each of us, but I broke it down into 3 specific areas of our lives: personal, Having goals personally establishes resilience, self-discipline, gives us something to measure ourselves to, and also allows us to establish a growth mindset. And what I mean by that is it's an opportunity to establish a point in time where you are today and a point in time in the future where you want to be and what that goal is, and the opportunity to grow into something new and measure that growth. In our educational and professional lives, for many of us, we're doing both of those, both students and working. Both of my kids, high school and college, both are attending school and working at the same time. Helps establish direction for your educational and professional life. Helps motivate us to achieve that next step, whether it's a different role with the same company, whether it's to move into a management role, whether it's to move into a more senior role. As a student, maybe it's the opportunity to move from general studies into a specific career, from an associate's degree to a bachelor's degree, bachelor's to master's or similar. And it's also an opportunity to measure development, both as a student and as a professional or an employee. From a family perspective, gives us the opportunity to strengthen relationships with members of our family, gives us a shared purpose, which could also be stated in many cases for professional or educational. It also allows us the ability to create an environment of teamwork, establish strong communication, and the ability to establish mutual support for each other through a shared common goal. Many of these things are similar across all three aspects, but those are just some things that stood out to me. So let me give you some examples of my career. So what has helped me with establishing goals? So early on in my financial career, I worked for Fifth Third Bank. I was there for 10 years. It was the first financial services organization I worked for. Now, Fifth Third, I think they still do this, has an event called Fifth Third Day, which is May 3rd, the third day of the fifth month, so 5-3. And that is the time of the year where they review all of their employees. They do their annual reviews. So early on in my career, when I started establishing goals and really started thinking about them and writing them down, I utilized Fifth Third Day as my annual check-in. And even though I haven't worked at Fifth Third since 2006, I still utilize that day to check in on my goals. And what I do is, you'll see I wrote 1, 3, 5. I have 1-year goals, 3-year goals, and 5-year goals. Now, I'm specifically talking about professional, but that can be utilized for any sense. You know, maybe it's a family goal, maybe it's 90 days, 6 months, and 1 year. But what I do around the time of Fifth Third Day each year is I sit down and look at what were my goals for the last year, what were the goals I had for the 3-year time frame and the 5-year time frame, and then I think about whether or not I need to revisit those, refocus those, and potentially even revise those, because in the scope of a year, lives can change dramatically, right? So our goals sometimes change. The second thing I have written here is early on in my career, I wrote down on a piece of paper like 5 goals that I had, and I just wadded that piece of paper up and I threw it in my wallet. And I carried that piece of paper around for 10 years. Hard to believe, but kind of like carrying a $100 bill in your wallet for an emergency. You know, if your car ever breaks down, I carried this little scrap of paper in my wallet for a decade. And ends up, I moved it out of my wallet and got rid of it after the time period for those goals, well after it had already expired. So one of the things I will tell you is when it comes to goals, write it down. You know, a lot of people talk about journaling. Goals are very important. Put them to paper so that there's accountability and a hard copy of them to refer back to. The other thing is mentors. You'll see what I've put is I look for feedback, honesty, accountability, and all with credibility, because I have relationships with these folks personally, professionally. in my sales management career, I've always asked the people that work for me for feedback. One of the things I found is people think you're crazy. Why would I give my boss feedback? Well, the reality is we don't grow without feedback and coaching. So the first topic we're really going to talk about is a fear of goal setting. Why do we have fears? Another quote, Nelson Mandela, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. It's the willingness to do something you're afraid of and triumph over it. So here's our second poll. So let's talk about fears. So as Bob's working on putting this up on the screen, what are your biggest fears in setting educational or professional goals? You'll see the 4 options. I won't be able to stick to them. I don't have enough time to focus on my goals. I don't have support to make the goals happen. I haven't succeeded in the past, so I don't think I can now. So as we're waiting on results, again, large group, one of the things that's important when it comes to talking about fear in setting goals, confidence in establishing goals, accountability, is asking yourself tough questions so you know what you need to work on or overcome to establish those goals. If you don't ever ask yourself the question, it's always going to be a barrier. Bob, how are we looking? Sorry, Bob, you're on mute.
I'll go off mute and go back to the poll. Okay, we've got about a fifth of our respondents have replied, so it's been about a minute and a half. We'll go another minute.
Okay. And I will share with the group. We got another question right after this, so be ready to answer another question with quick fingers, and we'll move on. You know, a lot of people have fears that they avoid so they don't have goal setting, but we're going to talk more importantly about confidence and accountability after fear, and they're really the more important, more heavily focused items that really drive the goalposts for your professional or educational life when it comes to setting goals. So,
all right, about 10 more seconds.
All right.
All righty, 3, 2, 1, in the poll, and let's see what the results are.
All right. So 50%, 49%, I don't have enough time to focus on my goals. 31%, I don't have support to make the goals happen. So that's about a third. 25%, I won't be able to stick to them. So those are folks being honest with themselves. And only 7%, I haven't succeeded in the past, so I don't think I can now. I will say I like that that is the smallest number by far, because what that shares is 93% of our respondents are still confident in their ability. So that's 7%. That's based on experience. So we just need to work on establishing that confidence so that we can get back to establishing goals. So I don't have enough time to focus on my goals. So time management's a very important aspect for everybody. And let's go to our next one. What has helped in the past? When you have reached a goal in the past, what has been the number one factor that helped you succeed?
All right, the poll's open.
My sheer determination, friends or family, a mentor, teacher, or boss. Now, I would tell you they're all three very important. Back to the time management conversation about 50% answering that on the last question. That doesn't surprise me, especially if you've got a lot of folks on this call that are both students and potentially working or early in their careers. It's really hard to prioritize between families, work, school, mental and physical health. It's an incredible strength to be able to balance it all. If you can't tell so far from the 15 or minutes or so we've been together, I'm an extremely positive, enthusiastic person. I like to be direct, face things head on, not sugarcoat or let things get the best of me. So I like to tackle things head on, and I think it's tremendously helpful when you're trying to establish what I like to refer to as stretch goals to get yourself out your comfort zone and grow both personally and professionally. So, all right, Bob, how are we looking?
Hey, we've been a minute 35 in here, and we have 85 respondents so far, and it keeps growing. So this is the favorite quiz of the day.
Okay. Yeah, how about that?
You guys keep going. We can break 100 here soon.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, we hit 101, and we'll go about 30 seconds more.
I'd like to say that we just have about 200 people on here are waiting for me to mess something up.
I think you're doing great.
Yeah, you gotta have fun and be able to laugh at yourself. So, like we
folks,
talked about,
15 more seconds. 15 more seconds. Let's get it in there. We're at 115 out of 158.
Wow,
pretty nice. All right, polls closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Interesting. Okay, now this surprises me. 73% of the respondents said that their number one factor that helped them succeed reaching a goal in the past is their sheer determination. So that tells me people are gutting stuff out. They're digging deep, relying on themselves. 15% family, 12% mentor. We'll move forward, but I would say, give you something to think about. That mentor number should be 50%, whether that's educational, an advisor, whether that's, a neighbor, someone at your church, someone at your job that's, as I mentioned previously, credible, honest, someone you can bounce things off of personally and professionally that's willing to give you, specific feedback to help you grow both personally, educationally, professionally. So that's a big area of opportunity for the group on the call today. And I say that because a lot of times those are the folks who are going to be the most honest and direct with you. All right, so let's keep talking about fear. So moving beyond fear, because that is where growth truly takes place. You hear people talk about moving outside your comfort zone or stepping outside your box, and that's where you challenge yourself and oftentimes can grow the most. And that is very, very true. But some of us are just absolutely paralyzed by fear, whether it's, afraid of heights. My wife's afraid of heights. So, don't ask her to get on a ladder, right? Some people are a big one in the workplace. It's amazing how fearful people are of speaking in front of a group. It is paralyzing to a lot of people. So finding a way to just inch through your comfort zone and tackle that fear can really help you grow. Here's a great quote from one of my favorite actors, Denzel Washington. You pray for rain, but you got to deal with the mud too. That's part of it. And really what that says is things aren't easy. You want to grow professionally, educationally. You want to step out your comfort zone. Things are challenging. So figure out a way to deal with those challenges. Fear of failure is the biggest barrier to achieving dreams. And that doesn't mean getting rich. That's achieving the next degree, getting that job you want, getting closer to your faith. I said that doesn't mean getting rich, and really what I was referring to was monetarily. There are many ways to be rich other than having a big bank account. Fear of failure, biggest barrier to achieving your dreams, regardless of what they are. It is a threat to your success in all aspects of your life, as I mentioned, personally, educationally, professionally. We learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. The key there is having an environment, a circle, education, family, professional, where you're allowed to fail and not beat up when you do, where you're given, quote unquote, rope to fail and the ability to step back, reflect, and grow from it. 2 examples for me. I think I've had a fairly successful professional career. In 2006, along with a partner, I decided that I was going to open my own business. And anybody that's been in the professional space, whether it's banking, legal, accounting, when I tell you it was a restaurant, they'll shake their head and go, "Oh my God, why would you do that?" 50% of restaurants fail. Well, it's something I always wanted to do. Opened in 2008 in May, and anybody that knows the financial markets from 2008 knows that in September-ish of 2008, the mortgage market crashed. And it was a disaster. We lost about 40% of our business in the scope of about a week. Now, if you know anything about restaurants, you can be packed on Friday and Saturday, but doesn't pay the bills. You got to be busy 6 days a week. You can't have 2 people for lunch. And ultimately, my partner and I was closing the restaurant 2 nights a week, getting home at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, getting up and going to my day job at 7:30. My partner was doing the same. Sometimes we aren't prepared for what's going to get thrown at us, and we just have to deal with what Denzel say. You got to deal with the mud, right? So we did that for 7 years and ended up selling our restaurant to another operator who operated it until the end of the lease. But I got to tell you, it was one of the most challenging times of my life. During that time, we also had our first kids, so we had our hands full. Another example, unemployed. I am currently unemployed. I left my most recent job in January after discussion with my wife that it wasn't the right spot for me. It wasn't the right long-term spot for me. And I took some time off. We traveled quite a bit. And while I'm currently interviewing and looking for opportunities, the market's changed dramatically in the financial services space with the economic uncertainty, the interest rate environment. It's really weird for the first time in my almost 30-year professional career. So a lot of uncertainty. But you got to be able to deal with the challenges that come along with the goals and the things you want to do. So how do we learn from our mistakes? This is what I mentioned earlier, very key in terms of having the ability to make a mistake. Acknowledge the mistake. Be willing and able to acknowledge that there was a mistake made. Reflect on what went wrong and why. Seek to understand what caused it. Understanding what caused the mistake allows you to avoid it. Identify what you would have or could have done differently. Again, allows the opportunity to do it differently next time. Create a plan to avoid making the same mistake again. Develop a growth and learning mindset. I am smarter, stronger, more agile than prior to making the mistake. Why is it difficult to learn from our mistakes? We're human. We don't like to admit we made mistakes. Ego and defensiveness. It's just natural human reaction to not admit that we made mistakes. Habits we've developed over time. Habits are hard to change. And the need for intentional self-reflection, the need to reflect on how things are going in terms of our educational journey or our professional journey. So let's talk about confidence. Being confident and setting goals. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. And I truly believe that. Believe that you can do something and you have the mindset, you're not your own barrier. Everything you ever wanted is learning how to draw it out of yourself because you are that powerful. And I truly believe that. I believe that any single person can establish a goal for themselves, put the right steps in place to achieve that goal, get support, and might not be tomorrow, might be baby steps, but keep moving forward. You can build confidence by setting achievable goals, practicing positive self-talk. One of the most important things you can do is speak positively about yourself. It might sound crazy looking in the mirror and talking to yourself about how strong of a person you are, but the reality is we develop habits, and the more you believe in yourself, the more others will believe in you. Focus on your strengths. Focus on your physical and mental health. Surround yourself with supportive people, your circle. Confidence pitfalls. Comparing yourself to others as a measurement of your worth. It's really difficult not to do that, but it's really something that is a negative influencer on your own self-confidence. We're each individual, unique people. We each have our own unique strengths, personally, educationally, professionally. Confidence pitfall number 2, getting into negative thoughts. Push those out of your mind and focus on the positives, as I mentioned before. We can't all be great at everything, but I guarantee we're all great at something. Don't allow failure to be a roadblock to future growth. What it should be is a stepping stone. I didn't do that well this time, but you know what I could have done differently? And next time I'm going to step over that roadblock. Holding yourself accountable to unreasonable expectations or goals. We'll talk a little bit about this later. Goals need to be reasonable, achievable. Otherwise, they serve to do nothing other than tear us down. So think positive thoughts about yourself. You are not defined by your past, and your past does not limit or determine your future. What you do today does not affect what you can do tomorrow. You can change your mind today that tomorrow you're going to take a different direction. I pulled this out of scripture, Isaiah 43:18-19. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing, now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. This verse is a call to let go of past experiences, whether good or bad. In the business world, we like to use the term, what have you done for me lately? That's kind of what that says. Focus on what's in front of you. It emphasizes focusing on the present and future, trusting that God is at work, creating something new in your life. Me personally, how have I developed confidence after failure? Self-reflection and analysis. Don't avoid the tough questions. Accepting responsibility for failure without beating myself up. It's okay to say I made a mistake here and not turn around and say I'm an awful person. It's okay to say I made a mistake, but I'm still a wonderful human being who's supportive of my family, my friends, my work partners. Celebrating success. I think all of us are too hard on ourselves. We need to celebrate success more. Maybe you don't achieve all 5 of the goals you established, but you achieve 3. Well, there's no reason not to celebrate that and then repivot and focus on the other 2. Investing in others and growing with them. One of the things I've found through my life is, I reference this from scripture. One of the ways I can ease my burdens is to help others ease their own. One of the greatest joys I get is by helping other people, even if it doesn't necessarily minimize the challenges I'm facing. It still gives me tremendous internal, growth and positive feeling. All right, let's move on to accountability. Holding yourself accountable. It is not only what we do, but also what we do not do for which we are accountable. Part of that is avoiding things that need to be done. You're still accountable for that. Maybe not today, maybe not in what you see at this point, but ultimately we will be. The quote on the left, famous author Ralph Waldo Emerson, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." And I truly believe that. If you decide you want to be an attorney, well, if you set goals to do that, set the parameters around that and work towards that, whether it takes you a year or 20 years. I truly believe everybody on the call and everybody we come in contact with has the abilities to do whatever they set their mind to do. How do we hold ourselves accountable? Do you reflect on your daily or weekly actions? I think we saw earlier a lot of people mentioned that they do monthly or annual goals. I challenge you to do it a little more often. Maybe you're not writing goals every Monday and then looking at them every Friday, but maybe you are reflecting on how your week went as both a student, an employee, a family member, a friend. Where could I have been more supportive? Where could I have worked on my confidence? Where could I have faced the fear? Or where could I have asked for accountability? Do you consistently communicate with a mentor in your personal or educational, professional life? If you do not consistently do that, I would urge you to do it regularly, at a minimum, monthly. I have I'll call it a men's group that I started at one of my prior churches before we moved, with a group of other men roughly my age, where we used to hold a Bible study on Friday mornings. Many of them have moved all over the country. I still text with many of them regularly. There's a couple that still live locally, and every once in a while we'll get together and grab a beer and talk to each other. It's very important to reflect personally, professionally, with people that you can count on, that can be your sounding board and can hold you accountable. Holding yourself accountable means taking responsibility for your actions, decisions, and their outcomes without making excuses or blaming others. You've got to own up to that stuff. You got to help others do the same. And very important, an item that we'll talk about on the next slide, SMART goals. How do I hold myself accountable? I ask for feedback from my supervisor, from my staff, my men's group, my family. I maintain mentor relationships, personal and professional. I celebrate successful achievement of established goals. I also like to add stretch goals, pushing my comfort zone. I have a goal to achieve X, but you know what? I'm going to establish a stretch goal, and maybe it's Y. I might not get there, but I'm going to work towards it. Look at what I have achieved, in quotations. I sit back and talk about what have I achieved in the last week, the last month, the last year, personally, professionally, in my faith. It's important to reflect on not only what we could do differently, but what we have achieved. For everybody on the Zoom call today, if you're a student at Chatfield, or even if you're not, you have achieved something by enrolling and taking classes, looking to improve your education and establish a professional career for you down the pipeline, possibly even providing for a family, potentially multi-generational. If you know you can do better, then do better. I love this quote. And that's not just as a student, as a family member, as a worker. That's anything in your life. Don't sell yourself short. We all have days where we take off, right? It's a mental day. But in the end, whether it's a week, a month, a year, challenge yourself. So here's what I talked about earlier with SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And one of the examples I used was I have a daughter who's a junior in college. A SMART goal would be to say, next semester I want to achieve a 3.0 GPA. A non-SMART goal would be, I want to get better grades next semester. All right. A SMART goal is when I said I want to achieve a goal of 3.0 GPA next semester. Well, that's specific. That's measurable. I can measure whether or not I achieved that 3.0. It's achievable because her GPA is right around there. It's relevant because she's a student and she's looking to try to make a decision on what her career path is going to be. And it's time bound because it's measuring a semester. SMART goals are very constructive in that they require you to establish goalposts or boundaries for your goals rather than just establishing a generic goal like, I want to get better grades next semester. Well, that's maybe it's time bound, maybe it's not. It's not specific, that's for sure. You can apply that to anything in your life. I want to lose weight. But I want to lose weight doesn't really hold me accountable to anything. I want to lose 10 pounds by May 1st. Well, that's specific. That's measurable. That's achievable. That's relevant for my health. And it's time bound because I established a day. Let's see. So in the interest of time, why don't we go ahead and open it to Q&A. And this could be audio or this could be in the chat session. And why don't we see if we have any questions for myself, Bob, David, or the group. I know we went through all that information pretty quickly and there's a lot of folks on here.
There was a question about whether or not it's smart to have short-term or long-term goals. Which one is more important?
I think that's a great question. I mentioned earlier that I have 1, 3, and 5-year goals. So I think the further out you go in terms of long-term, the more difficult it is to be specific. Only because, as I mentioned earlier, a year's a long time. But I do believe it's wise to have short-term and long-term goals. I believe it's easier to measure and refocus or revisit short-term goals. Not that you can't long-term, but long-term might be, hey, I want to achieve my master's degree in 5 years. Or that may end up taking you 10 years. You may end up pivoting. But I also think it's very wise with short-term goals to, establish, if you're a student, what the next semester looks like, what the next 2 years looks like. Like I said, refocus, revisit, repivot on a regular basis. But I do believe short-term and long-term are important. And in many cases, they have a different focus. One might be educational, one might be professional. I see someone in the chat said, how do I know if I am aiming way too high? That's impossible. There's no such thing as aiming way too high. I mentioned earlier that if you can do better, then do better. I think the important thing with quote unquote aiming too high is, do you have a framework or goalposts to get to that goal where you think it might be too high? That might be a 10-year goal. Do you have baby steps to get there? If my goal was I want to be president of the United States in the next election, well, that's ridiculous, right? But if I said, I want to be the president of a company someday, okay, how do you get there? Establish steps, timelines. By X date, I want to have this knowledge and skill set. Another goalpost or another timeline. The more lofty the goal, the more likely you need to put steps into place and parameters where you're going to set specific milestones or achievements you want to have on specific timeframes, rather than just one goal of getting to a specific lofty goal. But Also, how do you work on burnouts? Refocus. Sometimes I get exhausted and less motivated mentally. I think that's the time where you need to step back, discuss the goal. Is it the goal that's burning you out or the steps to get to it? And maybe you need to reestablish your goals. Important thing with that is to talk about it with someone, a mentor, an advisor, a close family member, a coworker, and specifically discuss the mental exhaustion, the burnout, and determine what the root cause is. Do you need to revisit your goals and focus somewhere else? It's crazy to me in my professional career, and I'm in my mid-50s, the number of folks who I've worked with who had a goal to get to a certain point, only to realize 20 years into their career, it wasn't where their passion lies. And to completely repivot and do something differently. And here they are, 20, 25 years in their career, just starting over in a field that they are incredibly enthusiastic or passionate about. And that goes back to the fear of challenging your career, your education, where you're at so far, and whether or not you've made the right steps. Step back, reflect on whether or not your goal is the right goal for you. And if it is, find tools, resources, support folks to help you get through that burnout and that mental exhaustion so that you can get over those barriers. If it's not, find a new goal. I cannot encourage you enough to have a mentor, a positive support system that can help you when you're frustrated or burnout. Personally, educationally, professionally, at every stage of my life, all three of those, I've experienced some of the most challenging times where you look and you just want to quit. And having the right support system is crucial to being successful. So,
Keith, I can comment on my personal experience early on, even before I went to college, is the advice I got from neighbors or people I had worked with just stuck with me. It's the little voice in the back of my head when I just feel like I'm done, I can't go forward anymore. It's that don't give up attitude. If things were easy, everybody would do it. Things that are worthwhile
100%.
are challenging and will test you, and you push through that.
Yep, absolutely. I'll tell you, Bob, it's funny, with both of my kids and some of their first jobs, we share that conversation constantly. There are a lot of things that are very challenging, but also very rewarding. Education, profession, family, being a parent. I'm sure there's lots of people on this call that are parents. You will, in my opinion, you will never find anything so rewarding yet so challenging. How about trying to sleep for the first month or two when you have a child? You realize how little sleep the adult body can actually survive on. So, it's really important that you have a positive support network, not just around goal setting, around life in general as an adult. There are a lot of folks on this call who are really dealing with a lot on their plate. And I would say kudos to you, especially if you're a parent, a student, working a job, managing multiple generations in your household. You are the definition of a strong person, far more than me. And I truly mean that when I say that. So keep going. That's all I can tell you. Keep chugging on, keep moving forward. Life is going to continue to get better for you. So do we have any other questions, any other feedback? Alex and Bob, I would just say that when I said earlier that I am or Bob shared earlier that I am a, truly passionate person about coaching, mentoring, developing people. I am happy to, outside of this seminar, answer questions, talk with people, about goal setting, answer questions. A lot of times there are people who don't want to raise their hand in a setting with this many people. Feel free to reach out to David Hessing with Chatfield. David can communicate with me, and I'm happy to get on a call with someone. I'm happy to answer questions via email. I truly do believe that a positive attitude and having confidence in yourself really is 50 to 75% of the battle in anything, personally, professionally, educationally. Having a positive attitude about yourself goes a long way. Bob, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. It's been very informative. I always pick up tips along the way. We will have this available on our website tomorrow afternoon, and there are also recordings of our previous 2 webinars for your viewing pleasure. I would encourage you to go back if you want to get that motivation, get that spark going, and take a look again. And there's a lot of information to unpack here. I think Keith's done an excellent job. I'm motivated. I would be in the bottom tier where I have not completed my 2026 goals yet. So I have some work to do this week, and I will get on that. I'm a goal-oriented person too. I think most of us here are that way. And so I thank you for your time and attendance, all the good questions, and appreciate your support of the Chatfield Edge. And I hope we're doing a job to help you move forward in life and achieve your dreams. All right, everyone. All right. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful holiday season and a Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, Bob.
Hi, everyone. Bye, everyone.